Excellent. All right, we're going live.
We'll do it live. Oh. All right. Excellent. I'd like to welcome everybody to our November 29th, 2021 regular council meeting being held at the Comox Valley Regional District Civic Room. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are meeting and zooming on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. First matter of order is the adoption of minutes. Excellent. Are there any errors or omissions? I'm seeing none, so I'll move that these are unanimously accepted with no errors. And moving on, we have no late items that I'm aware of and no delegations. And we'll move right into staff reports and presentations. First is our signing authority amendment.
I'll move the recommendations.
Second. Okay. It's been moved by Councillor Hillian, seconded by Councillor Frisch. And would you like to speak to it, Councillor Hillian?
I was going to offer to read it if that was necessary. Essentially, Mr. Mayor, it's that based on the December 6th, 2021 staff report signing authority amendment, Council rescind all previous signing authority appointees and appointed signing authorities, the individuals noted on the agenda for the positions for the city in regard to the items noted.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I did hear you say December 6th, so would that be December 29th?
No, so December 6th staff report.
Yes, but today's the 29th. So I'm just saying maybe
Oh, right. Sorry.
We'll fix it in editing. It's all good. So
Based on the November 29th staff report, that should be sorry.
nope, it's all good. Thanks very much for that. I appreciate that, Councillor Hillian, and for staff for putting this forward. Are there any further questions or comments regarding this motion? Seeing none. Councillor Hillian.
Well, sorry to be a pest, Mr. Mayor, but I'm always of the view that we should at least have somebody speak to it based so that anybody tuning in will know exactly what we're doing here.
All right, I'll pass it over to our CEO, Jeff Garbutt.
Through the mayor, Ms. O'Connell will give a short overview.
All right, Claire.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. So we have had some staff turnovers, people going on to other positions as well as some retirements. And as such, we have a requirement to update our information with the banks for our financial signing authorities. In addition, we've also had some changes due to technology and processes regarding grant applications that has just created a bit of a glitch in our communication process for grants. So that's why you've got the positions being able to submit grants on behalf of the city, because they now require signing authority. And the last piece is just to eliminate the additional language to disposition or acquisition motions, which is basically identifying a signing authority in each report. As opposed to that, what we're saying is just creating a blanket signing authority for acquisitions and dispositions. Therefore, there's no ambiguity moving forward.
Okay, thanks very much for that explanation. And I think that has satisfied everybody at the table here. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Excellent. Thanks very much. And next we have the appointment of the Chief Financial Officer, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Excuse me. I'll move that in accordance with Section 149 of the Community Charter. Renata Waika, Acting Director of Financial Services, be appointed as the Acting Chief Financial Officer until such time as the recruitment process for a new Director of Financial Services is completed and the successful candidate has been appointed as CFO.
All right, thanks very much. And I'll pass it over to our CEO, Jeff Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, as we had said a few times, we're sad to see Ms. Nelson go. The staff report provides an overview of her deputy, Ms. Wyckoff, to take over position as it's an interim step, and we have statutory requirements in order to have this person in place. So it's temporary until we fill the position, and staff recommendations on page 23 of the agenda.
Thanks very much for that. Any questions or comments regarding the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thanks very much. And next we have the lease assignment for lot 4 at 120th Street, the Courtney Air Park. All right, and let's see, Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that based on the November 29th, 2021 staff report, lease assignment agreement for lot 4, 120th Street, Courtney Air Park, Council adopt option 1 and authorize the attached lease addendum between Sealand Flight Incorporated, Incorporated 590714, Andreas Rutkowicz, doing business as Airspeed High Ultralights, and the City of Courtney for the property having a legal description of PID 000-892-149, Lot 1, Section 66, Comox Land District Plan 1494-2, except any portion of the bed of the Courtney River and further identified as Lot 4 on Plan VIP 64872.
It's been moved and seconded, and I'll pass it over to our CEO, Jeff Garvin.
Ms. O'Connell will give a quick overview.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. This lease was actually renegotiated in January of earlier this year, so it's in really great shape. And the only thing that's changing is just the assignment from one business to another. There's no other changes proposed.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. This all looks great. I just have one question, which is I noted in the report, it says there are legal fees of approximately $500. I was wondering, is that something that the other party will be covering since this is a change that they requested?
Oh, hang on one sec.
Through Your Worship, that's something I've noted as well. And I wasn't, when the lease was originally set up, we didn't have it as part of the agreements originally. With the number of assignments you've seen come forward this year, it's being noted for future changes to new leases as they come about. But this is the assumption of an existing lease, so we hadn't negotiated any. And in this case, we were able to actually use some of our previous learnings to shortcut some of those legal fees as well.
All right, thanks very much. And seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And next we have the Lake Trail Road pedestrian infrastructure options. And so do we want to just receive that for discussion before we make a motion, or Councillor Hilliard?
Well, I can move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor, and we can still have discussion. I move that council direct staff to design an active transportation facility in 2022 that meets BC active transportation grant funding requirements, and to further submit an application to BCAT funding once the design is complete. And that's in relation to the pedestrian infrastructure on Lake Trail Road between Arden Elementary and Lake Trail Middle School.
Excellent. Moved by Councillor Hilliard and seconded by Councillor Frisch. And I'll pass it over to our CEO, Jeff Garvin.
Thank you, to Mayor and Council. This is a long-standing item that's been out and amongst the world for a little while here. I'm very happy to have this in front of you. Mr. Shaw is going to give a little overview. I think there's some interesting options here as well. It has the potential to link to the electoral area active transportation network as well.
Thanks very much.
Yes, thank you. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to present staff report Lake Trail Road pedestrian infrastructure options. The purpose of this report is to present Council with a completed conceptual design for the pedestrian infrastructure linkage on Lake Trail Road between Arden Elementary School and Lake Trail Middle School. At a council meeting in 2018, the Arden ambassadors appeared as a delegation to request pedestrian infrastructure along the Lake Trail corridor. Following that, the Engineering Services Department enlisted McElhaney Engineering to conduct an engineering review and a conceptual design options. The two options that you see in the report were depicted from the city's cross sections of the subdivision and servicing bylaw. And option 1 depicts a sidewalk on both sides of Lake Trail Road that would necessitate the removal of the existing ditch system and came in at roughly an approximate cost in 2018 dollars of $7.7 million. Option 2 depicts an installation of a gravel pathway along the north side of Lake Trail Road, which is typically located outside the existing ditch, effectively maintaining the existing drainage infrastructure. And in 2018 dollars came in at roughly $623,000. It should be noted, and as Mr. Garbutt pointed out, that the recommended option 2 concept would align with the recommendations within not only the City of Courtney's cycling network plan, but generally speaking would provide connectivity to the proposed CVRD's active transportation network plan and facilitate connection to electoral area A. The BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program provides a cost-sharing opportunities for network infrastructure, such as projects such as this, and therefore staff would recommend option 1, and that council directs staff to design an active transportation facility that meets the 2022 BC Active Transportation Grant funding requirements. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And it's great to see this come forward. I recall meeting with the students many years ago, I think on a previous term, and them coming and presenting to council to let us know what their needs were. And so it's great to see this coming forward. And with that, I'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Also really excited to see this come back. And I know this will make a lot of parents and children happy up at the Arden School and in that neighborhood. I just wanted to clarify how we'd be moving forward with the decision on the options. I don't know if I really need to weigh into it much at this point, because it sounds like it's something that'll come up later.
You can answer.
Yeah, through the CAO to Mayor and Council. Thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely. If the council does resolve today to option 1, that you'll see it in the budget presentations in terms of the transportation network.
Sorry, just to clarify, when you say option 1, you mean the design option 1, or you mean the staff recommendation option 1?
Staff recommendation of option 1, the depiction of option 2 within the.
Was that captured in the motion we just made? Okay, that's great. Well, I love, just so you know, I do love the gravel pathway. I think it really does fit that neighborhood well. So I think it's wise. I guess I did have a question about the shoulders and if there'd be any new treatments on those, or if those would remain basically the same. I know we have a double line down low, and then it goes to single line up higher up the road.
Thank you for that question. And I think you're referring to the current bike lane infrastructure that exists within the shoulder right away of that.
Yeah,
road?
hard to say what's a bike lane and what's a shoulder, but yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you for that. And I think to articulate an answer to that question, it would be an extension of what's existing there, and this would be a subsidiary element to that. So it would be an off the road pathway, and then the existing assets that are there would stay within the current alignment that they are.
Excellent. Okay, well, thanks for the work.
Excellent. And next is Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you very much for the report. It's great to see this coming back to council. I think the option, it's amazing how divergent these two options are in terms of cost. And I think rationally speaking, the gravel pathway is probably more attainable, although it looks like there's most likely a way of upgrading that in a way that creates a multi-use path without necessarily having a gravel surface, which I think is a logical compromise to the other alternative. The question I had was, there's in the description around option 2, it does say that there's a small section on the south side of the road between Webden and Arden, and I just wanted to clarify, is that where we would be looking at having a pathway on both sides, or would that be a crossing and a continuation up to Arden Elementary from that piece?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It would be 2 paths. It would be a path both on the north and the south side to facilitate pedestrian access from Webb to a controlled crossing and a safe crossing to get across to the north end, and then facilitate the forward movement to either school.
Great, that makes sense to me. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I also think this is great. This is a much needed piece of infrastructure. And I remember actually coming to the meeting as a potential candidate. Maybe I'll run for council, and watching the Arden ambassador speak those many years ago. And it's nice to see this finally be closing that loop. I had a couple of questions about crossings, because I imagine we'll have a fair number of people crossing from the south side to the north side to access this trail. I think you said, Kyle, that there's going to be a flashing light at the Arden crossing. So I think that was part of your answer to Councillor McCollum's question. So I was hoping that would be the case. And also wondering if we might consider putting a flashing light at the Edgett crossing, the one that's near, I guess, Supreme Convenience. just given that we're going to be expecting people who live south of Lake Trail to be crossing to the north side and then making use of it. I think we probably would maybe get more uptake on people choosing to make that crossing if it was as safe as possible. And people do tend to move quite quickly down Lake Trail.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And to answer your question, this maybe if I just may, it is a conceptual design drawing. So all of these comments can be taken into consideration as we get through detailed design, if some council so chooses to push staff in that direction. And yes, I think more appropriately flashing beacons would be the rapid rectangular flashing beacons, of which we have put in a multitude of locations in the city, provide an extra layer of security for those crossings, and it'll be prudent on this particular corridor.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton, and next Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks very much to staff for the reports and the information that this project is proceeding. I just want to acknowledge that the Arden ambassadors who presented this would have been, by my calculation, in grade 6 at the time of their presentation. And I'm guessing they'll be going to Vanier, if not post-secondary, by the time this is completed. But I do want to just acknowledge a Courtney citizen, former postal worker and longtime community activist, Mike Keelan, who passed away about a year ago. And he wrote a letter to the community when he knew that he was dying and didn't have long, where he basically summed up his life. And he put a message in it towards the end to City Council, saying, "The City Council, get that darn sidewalk for the Lake Trail Arden kids built." So I'm going to call his family and let them know that we're actually moving on that. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And I think that maybe I'll save my comments, but Councillor Theos.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Kyle. So just to clarify that that the option one that we're looking at is not the $7+ million, but with the gravel path, the question I have is in regards to the sustainability of the gravel path with rains and heavy weathers. Is it a path that could sustain itself through the kind of weathers that we see here in the Comox Valley in BC?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. I think you'll find that the gravel surfaces that were used broadly within the city's MUP or trail network paths are the majority gravel, and they do require a bit of upkeep in terms of maintenance, but they do also offer a permeable surface, which is great from an environmental perspective. And I think with the context of this particular corridor and the mitigating factors of maintaining the current stormwater infrastructure, that it would be more than appropriate for this.
Oh, yeah. Our CAO, Jeff Garber.
Thank you. Just through the Mayor and Council, we also have some transitional standards that we have between different areas within the city, and we do have a semi-rural standard in that corridor, and it's often a challenge to make those adjustments between the two. And so I think I would reiterate Mr. Shaw's comments on the practicality of it, as well as the form and character that was kind of envisioned in that the local area plan there.
Thanks very much. And I mean, this project came to light years ago when I was presenting to the Arden group, the landowners around the water treatment that was going to be happening. And they mentioned, well, what about sidewalks and safety for the kids to get to school? And I think it really points to this, the legacy of liability that we have, where we've, brought in lands from other areas, and then the expectation is that they get brought up to a certain level. And not only does that take time, but the more time it takes, the more it costs. And I just want to applaud staff who are really having to balance for us those tax implications, the actual operalization of what our wants are, which sometimes are conflicting. And they're doing this at a time when they're also undertaking a massive asset management project to make sure that we understand fully what needs to be done throughout the rest of our community as well. And so it is absolutely challenging. But again, to reiterate, to sort of see this project come forward again, we want to make sure that the students are aware that it has made it this far through the sausage maker, and we're really hoping that it gets completed as quickly as possible. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And thanks again, everybody. Next, we have the solid waste service. Councillor, hang on. Where did it go?
Got it.
Yeah, it did go to you. Yeah, Councillor first. My apologies.
No worries, thanks. I'm happy to move that based on the November 29th, 2021 staff report, solid waste cost of service review, council approve option 1. The council directs staff to remove multi-residential apartment and condo complexes only and institutional, commercial and industrial customers from the city of Courtenay solid waste collection service. That council directs staff to provide notification of the discontinuation of solid waste collection services as of October 31st, 2022 to all multi-residential apartments and condos and institutional, commercial and industrial customers. And that bylaw number 2244, City of Courtenay refuse materials collection, removal and regulation, and bylaw number 3022, City of Courtenay fees and charges, solid waste and recycling be amended to reflect these changes.
All right, that's been moved by Councillor Frisch, seconded by Councillor Morin. And with that, I will pass it over to our CEO, Jeff Carpet.
You through Mayor and Council, we have both Mr. Shaw and our technologist that works in our solid waste area. So we have a short couple slides here just to walk through, and Kyle will speak to them. I think, or if Beth is gonna, I'm not totally sure. Thanks.
All right. Oh, first slide. Stand by. Yeah.
First slide. Yeah, that's this. I'll do the intro. We'll do that after. Thank you to the CAO, to Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to present staff report solid waste cost of service review. The purpose of this report is to provide a summary of findings for the recently completed cost of service review. The city enlisted M&P to complete a detailed analysis of the service revenues relative to the expenditures for each of the service areas in an effort to ensure equitability and sustainability of service delivery. The overall determination through the M&P review was that a small portion of the operational costs and all of the administrative costs of the multi-residential, that being apartment and condo style buildings, and the ICI groups services are being subsidized by the single residential and multi-residential curbside revenues. The three key takeaways from that analysis were that the curbside residential is a sustainable service delivery model long-term, and that the multi-residential and commercial ICI groups are being subsidized by curbside residential, being that the surplus revenue from single residential is subsidizing the multi-residential and ICI. And finally, that the implementation of the organics will increase the overall cost of service delivery by way of an introduction of a new variable rate fee for the organics disposal to the new CVRD facility. With that, staff are recommending that to remove the multifamily apartment and condo complexes only and institutional, commercial and industrial, or ICI, customers from the City of Courtenay solid waste collection service, and further that the city would provide notification for the discontinuation of the collection service as of October 31st, 2022. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
All right, we have a few questions generated from that, starting with Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just had one question about the complexes, the condominiums and apartments. Has there been any discussion with those customers and how they feel about taking on that responsibility of getting their own contracts in place?
There you go.
Thank you for that. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council. Great question. Formally, no, there has been no consultation with the groups. We're seeking council's direction first and foremost. However, I would point out the contracts that are currently in play are current contracts with Mterra Services, and the City of Cordy administration purely provides the administrative portion, which is the billing portion of that contract.
Okay, so not a huge leap is what you're suggesting, changeover. Okay, thanks.
And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a similar question, which was just whether we're expecting any concern from the community about this proposed change, and whether there's any merit in allowing some time for to hear about that before actually making the decision, or if we have an imperative to get moving on this such that we need to decide on this today.
To our CEO, Jeff Corbett.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hillian, I think I'll start and then maybe Mr. Shaw may. So generally, we've been on the change. We've been asked for this. We've been working towards this. Thanks. And so will there be questions? Yes. We've been planning and going through this process for quite some time. And I think it's been discussed for quite some time as we go forward. And I think some of these changes that we're talking about, well, actually all of those changes are really in order to take our process, move it forward, come in line and utilize some best practices. But I think Mr. Shaw might have a bit more on that.
Mr. Shaw.
Thank you for that. Yeah, great response. And in follow up to Mr. Garbutt's comments, I would speak anecdotally to that. The conversation has occurred at a multitude of times with different customers as the service transitioned or the service gets to an end. The service that we currently have has been in place for roughly 12 years now. And moving forward into potentially an automated or semi-automated system for residential collection and continuing with the ICI format creates a level of complexity. The burden really falls to the administration to follow through on that. And there has been significant demand and potentially negative with respect to our current bylaw that provides a monopoly service for those ICI residents or businesses. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up, what assurance do we have that if we move to this system, and I totally appreciate the fact that what you're saying in the report is that residential taxpayers are subsidizing the multi-residential service, and obviously we want to correct that. But what guarantee do we have that, for example, all the multi-residential complexes like the strata behind where I live will, for example, establish an organics collection? It seems to me pretty important that as we move towards that, that we have the entire community on board.
Thank you for that. That's a great question. To assume that we would potentially get into a platform where we would be able to instill a organics facility broadly across our city, both from a residential curbside perspective, as well as from a multifamily and an ICI, really is going to be a part of the long-term plan in terms of working with the CBRD and the Strathcona Comox Waste Management Board to ensure that the bylaws are in place and that the requirements are in place in order to facilitate that broadly across our jurisdiction as well as our neighboring jurisdictions. It would not necessarily fall directly to the city. It's a long process still yet to be coming. We're at the infancy of that determination.
Okay, so just so I'm clear about it, what you're saying is that initially we wouldn't have a guarantee, but eventually bylaws would be in place, and the assumption would be that once that took place, that everybody would get on board.
Yeah, thank you for that clarity. Yeah, and not speaking on behalf of the CBRD, but likely that would be the most ultimate result of that.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right, and I don't see any further questions or comments at this point. Oh, Councillor Frisch, yeah.
Sorry, just something jumped out at me in the report. I'm wondering if I'm reading this right, or if it's really even that relevant, but it was talking about the assumption for the 2024 annual utility fee for single residential and multi-residential curbside, and it was estimating something like $240 for a weekly collection. I don't know if that rings bells for you. And then for bi-weekly, it was like $204 a year. And it just blew my mind that it was $35 to come another, however many times that is, 52 times, or I guess it'd be 26 times. Is that correct? And is it that inexpensive to have the trucks come around an extra time?
That is correct. It's based on a fixed rate charge, not the variable rate. And so the fixed rate is the vehicle actually going to each residential home and picking up the garbage.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So there's a base rate and then it's just that little bit more to actually get the trucks to roll. So, okay, I think that, all right, cool. Thanks for the question, Councillor Frisch. Okay, with that, I don't see any further questions or comments, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And next we have the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission meeting minutes. Sorry, solid waste. We did solid waste cost of service. It's the request for proposal. My apologies. Councillor McCullum.
I'll move the recommendation that based request for proposal. Council approve option 1, that council directs staff to issue a request for proposal to solicit proposals for a 3-stream curbside collection service for a 5-year contract with the provision for a 5-year extension, and that council directs staff to seek a memorandum of understanding between the city of Courtenay and the town of Comox and the village of Cumberland to undertake this joint request for proposal with legal fees to be apportioned based on service population.
Thanks very much. Moved by Councillor McCullum and seconded by Councillor Frisch. And I'll pass it over to staff, or CAO Jeff Barber.
Thanks. Again, Mr. Shaw is going to go forward with this presentation on this report.
There you go.
Thank you. Again, through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to present staff report solid waste service request for proposal. The city provides curbside collection for approximately 25,000 residents. The materials currently collected includes municipal waste, household recycling under the Recycle BC stewardship program, and yard waste. The city of Courtenay's collection service contract is set to expire on April 30th, 2022, with the option to extend to the end of October of 2022. With this expiry of the city's current collection contract and the corresponding opening of the CBRD's new organics collection facility in the fall of 2022, staff are recommending changes to the current curbside collection service delivery model. Staff recommend that the city pursue an automated collection style system utilizing carts or toters, and that council give future consideration to a 2-stream per week collection model. With other municipalities in the Comox Valley having their respective garbage contracts scheduled to expire at similar time, this alignment would allow for an intermunicipal or joint RFP to be issued. This approach, yet to be formally approved by each local jurisdiction, would attract or should attract a larger pool of contractor applicants to service the community. The city would seek to release a joint RFP or a joint proposal with the town of Comox, the village of Cumberland, for a 3-stream collection automated system or service, and further that the city would enter into a memorandum of understanding with both the town and the village for the RFP and legal reviews as required. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, and we have Councillor McCullum.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks again for the report. Yeah, I mean, this approach to proceeding with our RFP process for our next solid waste collection contract seems very logical, and I think I would agree that we may be using our resources more effectively, but certainly we should get better proposals if the size of the contract that's being bid on is larger. My question is, after the RFP process closes and proposals are being awarded, or a proposal is awarded, if there's a lack of consensus between the municipalities, could that slow our process in terms of delivering our solid waste service differently? And just if there's risks involved in proceeding with this jointly.
Thank you for that. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I appreciate the question. The blunt answer would be yes. I think there is risk. I think the advantage to the proactive nature of which staff have conversed with both the town and the village is to set us forth into a place where we feel comfortable with the service delivery model, realizing that the net benefit is to the greater good of the Comox Valley and all of the residents that are serviced. The RFP in itself, once released and brought back, there'll be a short timeline of which, and I believe the timelines for next steps are up there on the screen, for review and consultation with all communities to ensure that our forward is united. If there are differing opinions in terms of service delivery models that are chosen by each of the jurisdictions, it is likely to fall to an independent contract to service the communities. I will say in terms of procurement and timelines for service delivery, the sooner that we move forward, the more opportunistic it is for us to receive bids through this RFP process, as procurement timelines for both trucks and toter material is often extended through COVID, and we're doing our best to get this service online as soon as practicable.
That's a great answer. Thanks. And just to clarify, if for some reason we weren't able to reach an agreement, say with one of our municipal partners, would we have to commence the RFP process over, or would we be able to rescue the process with some type of modified process?
It's a great question. Thank you for that. And I think I'd have to deflect or defer to our procurement specialist to ensure that there'd be legal requirements within the contract to facilitate that, if so chosen. To that end, to simplify and reissue with a select amount of proponents that could be facilitated in quite a short turnaround time if required.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. And I'm happy to support this despite that risk.
And Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to staff. Well, as we learned this summer, people are quite particular about folks messing with their garbage. And so there's this is a major change that we're contemplating. It's a change in the way the actual garbage is deployed, new containers, and a new collection system potentially. So there's two main issues that people are going to be concerned about. Number one, will the service be reliable? And number two, how much more is it going to cost me? So I think it does speak in the report to how the new containers on wheels will actually be paid for. I think it would be appropriate if we spoke to that here at this meeting. So I wonder if staff could give us some clarification for the public record as to how the containers are actually purchased, who bears the cost of that, if this change will result in a significant increase in the price that people are paying for their garbage service.
Thank you for that. That's a great question. First and foremost, in terms of reliability of service, and I think that is in part learning from the most recent summer experiences, that it is very important that us as a region work together through this process to ensure systematic delivery of that service to our residents. And I think uniformly we could agree that it is in the best interest for us to continue to move in that collective forward, united. And in terms of cost of bins, the current structure that the staff are proposing with respect to the RFP is an amortization within the current contract. And so the front end cost of the bins would be a requirement of said proponent and then be amortized throughout the extent of the 10 years.
Okay, so that means that the whoever wins the contract actually purchases the bins. and they're reimbursed for that by the payment that we make to them over the life of the contract. But do we know, for example, have we got any baseline predictions about what percentage increase in the cost of the overall service will be to the average homeowner?
That's a great question. I'd hesitate to get in front of the RFP with respect to a modeling in terms of cost of service. I will say I will add to this in terms of the proponent providing the bins and then amortization, that the bins would become the ownership of the city after the fact. But we I don't think we are blind to the fact that there are other municipal jurisdictions, not only within the North Island, but also Central and South Island, that have transitioned to an automated cart delivery system. And the cost benefit, although incremental or changed, definitely offsets the opportunity for us to implement a successful organics program, which I think is vitally important to the overall service.
Yeah, and I thought, thank you. I thought that was an important item in the report, where it spoke to the fact that there'd be a locking device on the organics bin to prevent any rodents or bears or anything like that from getting in. Could you speak a bit as well about the automatic and semi-automatic options and what that involves? I know there's a lot of people who whose garbage bin is on the other side of a parked vehicle and things like that.
Thank you again. Another great question. We left it fairly open in terms of automated versus semi-automated with respect to our other counterparts that are partaking potentially in this RFP process, understanding that there may be road surface restrictions within their jurisdictions more so than the cities. But a fully automated system is a one person operated truck that picks up a cart that reads an RFID tag that associates that cart with that resident, and then dumps it automatically and then puts it back down on the ground. Whereas a semi-automated would still require two operators, one operator that actually have to leave the vehicle to actually associate the cart with the truck and then put it in. But it eliminates the ergonomic requirements and the lifting of those operators.
Right, and finally, I know that most other developed countries in the world have had these systems for a long time, and probably a lot of other communities in North America. So my anticipation is that it'll actually make life a lot easier to have your garbage to be able to wheel it to the curb rather than lugging a bin however far. But I'm just wondering what plans we have for communicating to the community and the general public about what these changes will involve and how far in front of the actual implementation date we'll be doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Another great question. Communications cannot be understated in terms of the importance of communications with respect to this service, and garbage, as you pointed out, impacts everyone. And has the potential to impact everyone in a different way. And so staff are very abreast of the fact that this needs to be communicated and communicated over and over again as much as possible in terms of what the service delivery models will look like, and the timelines for installation and cart selections for that matter. The communication plan is yet to be completely developed. However, it is in the works in the background, and we are able to not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but utilize successful programs from other jurisdictions that are close to home and duplicate those successes and learn from the failures of those approaches so that we may not make those same mistakes. But we understand that it'll be a journey. It'll be one that we'll utilize our ambassador program as part of as well through the summer months, when we onboard student ambassadors to talk not only about our conservation strategies with respect to water, but also solid waste in respect to the organics implementation. I'm sure many individuals will have questions, and that's the opportunity that we'll have to get face to face with those. We'll also be utilizing a lot of our festivities and events. Canada Day is a great one. For example, we would have staff on site to have those open lines of communications and talk about the future and the growth of our services.
Excellent. I think that's a great discussion, and I'll continue with passing over to Councillor Theos.
Appreciate it, Mayor. Yeah, basically that's going to lead into my question. My question is in regards to, are we going to have a follow-up with like a 6-month review or a 1-year review of how things are going and what direction we're going in and how to move forward with all this great information that we may be gathering in the most positive way possible?
And I do see we have our CAO, Jeff Carbon.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Theos. I think you've touched on why communication is important. We're going into a new service. I think we'll have a number of touch points back. I would say though, once we launch on this, I think it's more of a communications on how things are going and what we're dealing with, et cetera. So, you know, I think clearly communicating back what we're hearing, what's happening through our process will happen. But once we go down a path, though, it's not a communication back to whether we're going to, you know, revisit or review where it's going to go. I think Mr. Shaw spoke to this. I mean, this is and Councillor Hillian also alluded to this. I mean, it's a big change. And it's a different way, although very common in other communities. And so definitely, I think there will be a number of people who will ask questions like, where's my bin going to go? And my driveway is long, et cetera. So, you know, people have been able for a very long time to deal with, you know, a relatively basic approach to garbage collection. And we're moving on to kind of into the future. So we anticipate there will be lots of questions. We will be communicating back on what we're hearing and how the service is going. And then no doubt many people will reach out to council as well through that process. And that's why I think it's important to have strong lines of communication back.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. I was just going to say that, no, I've seen this this service occurring in other communities, and it seems very efficient and similar to what the CAO was saying is that my goal with the question was that not to revisit whether to continue it, but to revisit how we can continue moving in that strong direction in which we learned from the prior time period and move forward with some actions to even make it better. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Councillor Theos. I think we had a great discussion. Really want to appreciate staff for clarifying a lot of the little things, and I'm sure we'll be continuing this conversation, not just to make sure we're as up to date as possible with all any things as the project potentially changes, but also so that we can communicate that out to the electorate as well, who obviously are going to be affected. So really appreciate that. With that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And I'm sure we're done the two solid waste service things now, so I feel more confident moving on to Parks and Rec Advisory Commission meeting minutes. Excellent. It's been moved and seconded. Does anybody want to speak to this? I see Councillor Helene. I saw your finger on the button, so I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have two questions. First of all, I'm pleased to see that the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission has reconvened after a fairly long hiatus. I'm not sure who the chair of the commission is. It doesn't actually state within the minutes. Perhaps it's Mary Crowley, as her name's mentioned first, but if staff could clarify that. And also if it indicates in the second set of minutes that public consultation in relation to McPhee Meadows was scheduled to begin in the fall of this year. And I'm just wondering if staff can let us know whether that in fact has started to occur or not.
All right, our CEO, Jeff Garvey.
I can speak to the second question first. The process has definitely started with McPhee Meadows, and it's very positive in that regard. I couldn't tell you who the chair currently is, and I'm not sure Ms. Saunders is on right now. We can report back. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Saunders has just communicated with me, and she is on and can answer.
Thank you. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council. The chair is Alan Douglas. So he's the chair of the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. And just to reiterate what Jeff said, or our CAO said, is the public consultation for McPhee Meadows is underway. We are starting with key stakeholders. So the family and local neighbors, and then we'll be going to broader consultation through a public survey in early December, which is this week, but in the next couple of weeks. So we expect it to start before the winter break.
Great, thanks very much. And I also note that Councillor Theos is on this committee, so thanks for his service there.
All right, thanks very much. And it is just for receipt. So all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And we get to reports and updates from council members, and we'll start with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think we've been doing less of these reports and updates because our meetings have been so long, but it's not even 5 o'clock. So I'll take a minute or so to speak. So yesterday I was with a number of other members of council, members of Cumberland and Comox Council and the Regional District Board, just spending some time focusing on the toxic drug emergency that we're facing. And we took part in Walk With Me, which is a remarkable project that gives you a guided walk through downtown while listening to the stories of people who've lived through this crisis. And there's some powerful and tragic stories, as you can imagine. And I think it's something which most policymakers would benefit from having this experience. And the walk was followed by some time spent in a circle, breaking bread and speaking openly about our reflections on the emergency. And it also marked the release of phase 1 of the Community Drug Strategy Report. And the support of the City of Courtenay was pretty fundamental to this project, to the Community Drug Strategy Report. Since 2002, the City of Courtenay has had its own community drug strategy. But in 2019, the community drug strategy was reimagined and reborn with the recognition that the poison drug emergency was not just a Courtenay issue, and that we needed a plan, and it needed to be a regional plan. And with that in mind, the city worked with the Community Health Network to create a new group, the Comox Valley Community Substance Use Strategy, which represented all parts of the valley and focused specifically on the goal of producing a comprehensive regional drug strategy. And I just wanted to take a minute to note the support that Courtenay's put into bringing this conversation to a regional level, and that look forward to seeing what the next phase will look like. And it's encouraging to see other regional partners stepping up to support this the strategy as it moves forward.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cole Hamilton. And Councillor Frisch. Did you have a meeting with the Junction?
Okay. Yep, I did have a meeting with the Junction last week, and it's going quite well. The Junction has, with this community advisory group, has sort of taken on the responsibility for that community, although there's a lot going on in that community other than the Junction. So the Junction is doing an excellent job of managing their clients. They do have some vacancies, which is unusual, but they're working at filling up those spots. And a lot of the challenges in that neighborhood actually revolve around people who are out on the streets and living rough and having to make do with a lot of difficulties and issues. And they often end up in that neighborhood for one reason or another. So it's sort of an ongoing challenge that we're experiencing probably all over the city, as we talked about in previous meetings. And I think we're hopeful that we'll find a path forward where things can get better for everyone. And obviously, we're looking to the province for a lot of help and looking to do our part as the city. So that's how things are going there.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just highlight the community to community forum that happened on Thursday of last week. And this is something that happens 2 or 3 times a year, and it involves Comox First Nation and elected officials from many aspects of the community, school district, Islands Trust, and all over the governments, including the mayor of Sayward of all places, because that's in the Comox First Nation territory. And these forums address issues that are of relevance to the parties involved, but they're also designed to help build the relationship between the Comox Nation and other elected officials. And I think it's safe to say that that process has been very positive. The direct feedback from Chief Rempel that she really appreciates the relationship that she has with local government and in particular Courtenay Council and the regional district, I think is very significant. And our efforts in that regard, I think, have been very worthwhile. Thank you. Well, and I might mention that the subjects that were addressed in that forum were the community poverty reduction strategy and flood mitigation and the coastal flood strategy, which of course is very relevant to people with the events in the province right now. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Councillor McCollum. Okay, that's fine. Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just very briefly, I just wanted to mention on November 17th, there was the first of a series of community arts roundtables. And I think this was something that we'd been waiting for in the community. It was something that's been kind of incubating for a while. So it was a small group for the first one. It was on performing arts. But there will be several more, and folks can find out about the dates of those on the Comox Valley Arts website, but there'll be one on literary arts and I believe music and recording and visual arts, etc. So they're quite interesting because it's really taking a look at what the needs of the community are and what the benefits of the arts are in the community, and they're open to anyone to attend. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. Appreciate that. Councillor Theos. All right, fair enough. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks. I started off with going to the Housing Central BC Affordable Housing Conference that's put on by the BC Nonprofit Housing Association. And obviously really looking for those injections of well, frankly, cash from the federal and provincial governments. But also, there was parts of it that the keynote speaker that finished really focused on how connectedness was such a critical part on the path of recovery, and often the disconnectedness that causes people to go down the path of addictions, and obviously can hamper mental health issues as well. At the same time, I met with Gorjans, our MP, who is our new federal critic for mental health and addiction. So we further continue that conversation on what measures the federal government can take to help move us in the right direction, and really excited to see what Gord can do, because he's really done well in his other portfolios. So I do have very high expectations if you're watching this, Gord. Had a Chamber of Commerce leaders meeting with leaders from across the community, came together just to discuss stuff. To no surprise, housing was one of the largest things. In fact, I've had 2 chamber meetings in the last few weeks around housing, employee housing in specific. So I do hope to help foster and get a second employee housing symposium going. We had one back in 2019, and we do have lots of housing under construction, but I think it's a good time in the spring maybe to have another meeting to move down that. And then with the nonprofit housing, to have a separate one that's more around social housing and how the provincial and federal governments come together around that. We had our Christmas tree lighting, Moonlight and Magic, and I just have to thank our community for coming out. It was an amazing event. I really want to thank everybody that organized the event, the BIA. I think Megan Kerson's had her hands in it, as well as many other great community-minded people, and it showed everybody had a great time. So really a huge thank you for those that came out. Also had a meeting at North Island College. It was probably one of the most difficult meetings where they were talking about their new craft brewery and chef program. And unfortunately, we had to partake and test things. So the one thing I can certainly say is it's a great program. I think the instructors are really inspired, but I think it also shows how the college is pivoting. They've gone into, obviously, they had already remote campuses and they were doing a lot of remote education, but the pandemic, they really doubled down, and I think they've done a great job of being able to adapt and not just create courses, but create courses that are really meant for that lifelong learning, not just get a degree and that's all you'll ever need to do. So it's great to see the movement that they're doing and how they're trying to get some feedback from the community. And we're going to be hearing lots about North Island College, I think, over the next year. there was a community forum, and there were sort of two main topics, as Councillor Hilling talked about, resiliency around climate change and poverty reduction. When we had the breakout sessions, I did go on the poverty reduction side, and again, housing, the lack of affordable housing, lack of social housing was a really big part of that conversation. And then the town of Comox had their tree lighting ceremony, and again, a great event. Lots of people there celebrating, and to my surprise, I was able to park like right next to the tree. So I wasn't sure that would happen. And lastly, again, very busy couple of weeks, but really accentuated with the Walk With Me experience yesterday. And I've talked with a lot of the people that are involved in the project over the last year or two. And it's been inspiring to have those discussions. But again, I think one of the things that was really highlighted is how those being connected to your community, how, having some sort of purpose that can help you if you're in a spiral around mental health and addiction issues. And absolutely inspiring to see all of the leaders, all the mayors were there, the chair of the regional district. And I did speak to each of them to let them know that we'll be following up, as this has been something that's been championed by the city. But the expectation is that given the alignment that we have across the valley, that everybody pitch in, not just with goodwill, but with dollars as well to help move these projects forward. So with that, I'll pass along. We have resolutions of council. And Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to move that whereas the impact of growth and development imposes a special burden on the demand for amenities, particularly affordable housing, and whereas the city's development variance permitting process does not currently identify or include amenity contribution requirements or options, and whereas the basic premise of amenity packages is that the increased value conveyed with development variance permits should be shared between the community and the applicant. So therefore be it resolved, the staff be directed to negotiate amenity contributions as part of the development variance permit application process. And
excellent, thanks very much. And
Yes,
you want to
Mr. Mayor?
speak to it? I know we spoke about it, but
yeah, thanks very much. So this resolution is designed to fill a gap in the process by which the city works with developers to secure amenities that benefit our community. The central principle behind that is quite simple, that where the city grants a request which increases the value of a property, that increase in value should be shared between the developer and the community. We have a clear process in place for rezoning, but do not have a similar process for variances. And some variances produce little change in the value of a property, like a smaller setback on an addition or a roof line that's 50 centimeters higher than is permitted. But other times a variance can substantially increase the value of a property. This was the case with the recent development proposal where the variances requested would more than double the number of housing units that could be built. That seemed to me to be a case where an amenity of affordable housing was appropriate. This resolution seeks to clarify that expectation. Council has made it clear that if there's going to be an amenity provided, affordable housing is our first priority. The resolution makes specific reference to affordable housing in the whereas section, underscoring council's intent to act on providing this amenity wherever possible. I was in touch with our CAO to confirm this resolution was sufficiently clear regarding the importance of affordable housing as an amenity. And he let me know that staff are crystal clear about our priorities and the importance of providing affordable housing units as amenities, and that this wording provides staff with the flexibility they need to negotiate for the amenity with the greatest value to the community in each situation. And I'd just like to say finally, just thanks to the CAO and the Director of Corporate Support Services for their expertise, and also I conferred with the Mayor on this as well, and I appreciate those conversations as well. And yes. So thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Cole Hamilton. And I think this is, part of those steps of taking those visions and those ideas, operationalizing them in a crystal clear manner. So I do appreciate you working with staff to bring this forward. Councillor Hillian.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. Thanks to Councillor Cole Hamilton for bringing this forward. If this passes, this corrects the challenge that saw me on the opposite side of the majority vote at the last council meeting. I do think that we have an obligation to signal to the development community and others impacted by policy what our direction is going to be on these sorts of matters. But I just would be interested to hear from staff about what sort of challenges this may present in terms of where one draws the line. Councillor Cole Hamilton in his remarks gave the example of the difference between a slight variance and a very significant one. There's obviously a lot of gray area in between, and I'm curious about how that process might unfold, and if staff feel that as is indicated, they have the leeway to address that issue.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councillor Killian. I think it's, I don't anticipate there being significant challenges. I think council has given us some pretty specific examples. We don't typically have significant variances that really affect typically, you know, as Councillor Cole Hamilton outlined, small setback changes, et cetera. There may be situations though whereby we're working through developments that have some variances, and we maybe need public access or various things. So I think we have a very seasoned staff in our development services area. This will make it clear that we should be considering the valuation of you know, asks, and we will be charged with bringing that forward. And I would expect that council will ask us if and when there are either amenities or no amenities, and I'm comfortable with the direction that we have at this point.
All right, thanks very much. Thanks, Councillor Helene, for the question. And next we have Councillor Frisch. Perfect. All right, and Councillor Theos.
Oh,
and you've turned yours off as well. Okay, there you go.
okay, thanks so much. Sorry. It's all good. So the the intent, you know, of course, certainly is very you know, important that the community does benefit from projects where you know, rezoning could result in significant value increase for the developers, and you know, maybe you know, affecting other commercial or industrial properties that have been paying taxes for many years with proper zoning that didn't need the upgrade. But my question to the staff would be, you know, what is our ability, as in terms of the negotiation under the charter, under the ability to actually negotiate without you know, pushing the line too far in regard to that particular negotiation?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Theos. Variances are discretionary. Typically, when we pull forward any ask of a developer, it'd be based on applicable community plan policies or situations. So that would give us a background for those to support those discussions. So to be clear, you can receive things in exchange for the approval of variances. It's not uncommon. We were advised through staff that hadn't been the case necessarily more recently with the city, but I'm aware throughout Vancouver Island of those asks. The example I used in terms of public access was utilized in the CVRD electoral areas. So I think it's a reasonable approach. We need to be reasonable, and the recommendation to have this motion, we would be relying on our existing policies as well as the existing official community plan. Shortly, you know, we'll have a new community plan in front of council. There are going to be more clarification around amenities, and then subsequently we'll roll that out. That will assist as well with our discussions.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much. And Councillor McCollum.
Thank you. Yeah, first off, I just want to thank Councillor Cole Hamilton for bringing this resolution forward. I think some better and clear policy around how variances are handled is going to provide better service to developers and clarity for our staff as well when handling these. So I think this is a really important step in the right direction. I also really appreciate that the affordable housing is a highlighted amenity because as we've touched on many times in this meeting, it's an issue that comes up in so many ways, and we really have a responsibility to make sure that we're addressing this at every opportunity for our community. The other point I wanted to make is that, and it probably doesn't need to be made for our staff, but maybe just to highlight it for the sake of it, that these variances can often be provided through existing amenities that the city provides. And I'm thinking about trail access, and I'm thinking about parks, and it's becoming increasingly more common that we see a request for a variance around parking, which is of course something that council supports. It aligns very much with our strategic priorities, but in order to assist people in moving away from car dependence, there is a cost to the community. And I think asking developers who are benefiting from not bearing the cost of providing as many parking stalls should see a clear connection, and that it would be reasonable to provide some money toward amenities that would improve our connectivity for pedestrians or pedestrian safety or cycling. And same with developments that see a reduction in the required private spaces because of their proximity to a park. That why would we not expect some type of contribution to park amenities if that's creating a savings for the developer? So I think I have one question just around how this could, if this would create any complexity when we are handling a rezoning that also has some variance, and whether or not we would just default to the rezoning process, because we often will see a rezoning and then a subsequent variance on something like parking. And yeah, whether or not that could create some confusion in processes.
Thank you, through the mayor, to Councillor McCollum. It's my intention that we have complete applications at rezoning, and so as to avoid subsequent variances. I think we've received some feedback from the development community that that we should be more clear in terms of our processes, so as to try and run them either concurrently or closely following one another, moving through the rezoning, development permitting, and building permitting process. We will have an opportunity to discuss that and come back to the development community through our general consultation, as well as we do have a developers working group that will be coming back together when we have our director of development services in place. But ultimately, having a complete picture would negate the requirement to do that. However, I would say sometimes in the process that there might be some coming back. So I don't think it would confound or confuse the process. But our new community plan will kind of, I think, provide some more guidance and update our amenities, which when we combine with a new kind of process to move through, I think it should be better.
That's great to hear. Thanks for providing that context.
All right, thanks very much, Councilor McCollum. And yeah, I think it was a great discussion that got us to this point. And again, thanks very much, Councillor Cole Hamilton. I did talk to our CAO after that meeting, and then talk to you immediately after. And I think, you know, getting, I think all of council is on the same page, but providing that clarity to the developers really helps the whole process and staff, so that we can reduce the amount of conflict and mixed messages and stuff. So again, a huge thanks getting to where we are right now. And with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And we have the schedule, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, Mayor, because the December 20th, 2021 council meeting is scheduled during the 2021 holiday, we'll move that the December 20th, 2021 council meeting be canceled with the next regular council meeting scheduled in year 2022.
Okay, been moved and seconded. And again, as Councillor Frisch pointed out, that meeting is right at the beginning of the school vacation and a lot of staff vacation. So to try to have a meeting might not be overly fruitful. And if there's no further questions or comments, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Yeah, there we go. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks very much.